Tash. I am VP of Customer Growth at Hook. And today on the podcast, I'm interviewing the Rising Star of the Year from the US Customer Growth Awards, Reegan Coleman. Regan, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me and for chatting to me a bit today.
Thanks, Tash. Yeah, it's so nice to be here. I really appreciate the invite to be on the pod.
Yeah, always. I ask everybody as the first question, how did it feel? How did it feel to win?
Surreal. I mean, I'm going to be honest, I didn't think I was going to win. I mean, if you look at all the other amazing people that were in the category, right? Like, I would have been happy for anyone. So when they called my name, I was like, are you sure? But it was really nice. It was very touching to have won.
I love that. Really nice. Well, we want to learn a little bit more about you. So maybe start off by telling us a bit more about your role right now.
Absolutely. So I work for Loxo. We are a leader in the AI recruitment space. I am currently an account manager. I've held a couple different roles over my time at Loxo, which has been awesome in terms of like professional development and growth. But currently what I do on a day-to-day basis, I have about 150 accounts that I am responsible for, book of business of about 2 to 2.5 million, kind of depends just on the fluctuation of what we're working on. But I'm really focused on long-term relationship building and strategy. So once account has been onboarded, right, their first 30 to 90 days, depending on their process, they then get switched over to me for that long-term relationship building. So anything from, again, strategical thinking in terms of how we can level up their business, as well as all the way through to renewals, right? And that process is not necessarily something that happens, oh, your term is up. It's obviously something that is occurring throughout the entire process, typically more like the 6-month range is when we try to start initiating that conversation. So wide variety of different responsibilities, but more so just being there as their point person and trying to integrate yourself into their business is kind of like an extension, just to help in terms of the future thinking from that standpoint.
Got it.
Yeah.
So in your role right now, are you targeted on renewal and expansion?
Yes, I would say that is definitely part of the role. I think more so relationship building is obviously a big standpoint. But yes, of course, we're always looking to see if the customers are obviously making sure that they're optimizing the plan that they have. If there's any room for improvement, what kind of areas of the platform could we potentially spend some more time on in terms of adoption and making sure they're sticky and getting the most out of what they're paying for and have. And then yes, if they, because we have a couple different options of plans, right? Just to make sure that we're meeting the customer where they're at and what their needs are. If there's room for opportunity based off of some of the things that maybe they've said that they want that they don't currently have on their plan, that's a great opportunity for me, obviously, to like bring that into the conversation. And then also just obviously expanding both their opportunity as well as Loxo's opportunity, but making sure it's a mutually beneficial experience.
Nice. Okay, amazing. And prior to being an AM, you were a CSM. Was this an intentional shift in role? Is it that Loxo now calls CSMs AMs and you're doing the same thing? Or maybe just give us a little bit of color around that.
Yeah, happy to. So I actually initially joined Loxo as a technical advisor. One of the things that I love about Loxo is that, yes, they will hire people that have previous CS experience, but they will also hire people like myself that came from a recruitment background, but has like the ability to learn a different process, right? That being CS. So I switched over from agency recruitment. I'd done about 3.5 years of agency. I was ready for a change. And so I moved over and I started on our technical team just so that I could start to learn the ins and outs of a product. I had never worked for a software. I didn't know what that meant. And so it was a perfect place for me to just kind of get my feet wet. There was always the plan for me to move over to a CSM role. I think in my offer letter, it had been between like 3 to 6 months, we would start making that transition. But I actually started moving over much quicker than that. I think I started getting my first accounts at like the 7-week mark after I had joined Loxo.
Nice.
And then, yes, Loxo, we used to have a organization where all of our CSMs did onboarding as well as the account management piece. And then we made an intentional split to have half of our team do onboarding and half of our team focus on the account management, long-term relationship building. So we kind of sat down, evaluated like where everybody was at and kind of maybe where their their strong suits would have been, what their preferences would have been, right? And it just made
Yeah.
sense for me to move over to our AM team. So that's a little bit more of the color as to kind of my career
Amazing.
trajectory. But
I think this kind of role is becoming more and more common. So
Mhm.
rather than necessarily having an AM working alongside a CSM, by the way, we do the same thing here at Hook.
Yeah.
Like my team are all called AMs,
Mhm.
but they would run what I would class as being like quite a traditional CS role in the sense of understanding what value means to the customer,
Yeah.
presenting a plan to deliver on that value, bringing the right stakeholders on that journey, showing the value back, and then off the back of that, having a natural conversation about renewal and upsell. And so I'm seeing this more and more. And so it's nice to see that you're in a really similar position.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting, right? Because we could have so many different titles, but it could technically be the same thing.
Yeah,
So
totally. Yeah.
yeah.
And so I think one of the things that the community is interested in is that shift into being more commercially minded. So you would have probably been quite commercially minded as a recruiter anyway. Then you came in as a technical advisor, started running the CS role, moved into AM. Has there been anything that you've had to do yourself to upskill yourself to be able to run more commercial conversations, negotiations, renewals, things like that? Because I know that CSMs out there are thinking a lot about that right now. How do they upskill themselves? How do they get the confidence to go do that? Is there anything particular that you did, or was it just I learned on the job and I figured it out as I went?
I think it's a healthy mix of both. One of the things about Loxo is that we are moving so fast every single day. And I mean that in the best way possible. I worked at Loxo for a little under 2 years, and it feels like it's been almost 4. And again, I mean that in the best way possible, because we are just moving so fast because we want to stay at the forefront of the marketplace. So yes, I think there's been a lot of learning on the job and just kind of being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I learn, I learn by doing. Like, yes, it's very helpful to shadow, but I think when I think about the feedback that I receive and how I can implement that, it's within another conversation, right? Of like, how did I attempt this particular renewal conversation? How can I learn how to do this better in the future? And then again, just acting on that, the next opportunity that I have. I will also say I have a fantastic mentor and boss, Anita Nikamani. She has made a very intentional effort of like making sure that my professional development it's a priority. So that has been so nice for me to be able to come into an organization where that PD aspect and looking after your people and wanting to level them up and upskill them is at the forefront. So definitely a couple different things that have come hand in hand. But
I love that.
yeah.
And the thing is, when you think about how sales teams run their commercial conversations, like before every call, before every negotiation, they do naturally sit and brainstorm with their colleagues and brainstorm with their manager. It is a really like collaborative,
Yes.
a collaborative environment. And so it's really nice to hear that you're doing the same thing in CS just with renewals. And I think there's probably a lot more of that to be done across customer success. It's just like, hey, I'm going into this conversation. How should I navigate it? What kind of language should I use? What should I prep for? Who do I need to bring in? How do I leave it? There's a lot more of that kind of like game planning to that commercial side of CS. And so lovely to hear that you've been doing some of that.
Agreed. Yeah, I think our leadership team they very much encourage us to come up with our own plans ahead of time, right? Obviously, want to make sure that there's that collaboration involved so that we can ensure that we're aligned. But I think that's also been part of my development, is being forced, not in a bad way, but being forced to sit down and think about these critically hard situations and being like, okay, what are the things that we can do within the parameters of the platform, within the parameters of the agreement, to try to meet the customer halfway, in terms of, whether it's a difficult situation, whether it's like a fairly easy renewal, and we're just trying to make sure that everything's mutually beneficial. So I think having that opportunity to think outside the box, it really has allowed me to progress. And I think that the environment that I'm working within, there's a lot that they've allowed me to do just from my own personal development.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think has contributed to you being so successful in your couple of years at Loxo and to winning the Rising Star Award? Maybe give us some insight into that.
Yeah. Well, so I was a college athlete. I really have a very competitive edge that has been instilled in me from a very young age. And I thank a lot of that to the life skills and the lessons that I learned when I was playing softball throughout my life. I also think I probably just have some innate characteristics of I really want to win and whatever that means, right? So I think a good example is, again, what I was saying with my technical advisor when I was starting that role and the 3 to 6 months in my offer letter. There was a part of me that kind of always knew that it was not going to be that long, because when I have a time frame that's set, I'm like, how can I do my best to beat that? So I think just pouring myself in and jumping in head first into this environment was something that did me very well. And I think also just over time, as I gained relationships with my customers, as I gained relationships with my colleagues and with my leadership team, knowing and learning how to advocate for myself was it was a great life skill and professional skill that I've been able to obtain. Our market is so full of incredible CSMs. So I'm sure there's tons of people out there that would probably have a very similar answer to me, right? Of why I'm sitting here. But I really think that it comes down to my drive. And I also really lean on my emotional intelligence. It's also a skill that I'm continuing to try to level up every single day, but we're working with people, right? At the end of the day, they are coming to us because they want to use our product. They want to use our platform, but you also have to understand what makes a person tick, what their financial constraints could be, what their business constraints could be, or expansions could be, right? And so understanding that piece of the puzzle is very important when you're thinking about these transactional relationships when it comes to renewals. So yeah.
Amazing. As part of the customer growth community, we've been doing these masterclasses, so interviewing industry experts who are sharing their expertise. And we just recorded one very recently, all on commercial acumen. And a lot of that is about how do you go and deeply understand your customer? How do you understand the business, the market, the stakeholders, what's important to them, what they're facing, and how do you then translate that into your plan? It's a lot of what you were just saying right there. You mentioned something that's really interesting to me, which is how to market yourself. And I think that a lot of CS folks just don't know how to do this. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't know how to speak up and talk about what they've been doing and their impact to the business. Do you have any tips and tricks or things to share with the community there?
Absolutely. I think my heart goes out to people that work maybe in an organization that doesn't necessarily inspire as much internal communication or advocating. That is one of the biggest pieces that I think has allowed me to feel comfortable doing that, right? But I also think there's a personal level of it too, right? In terms of my characteristics of being able to kind of feel comfortable doing that too. I think it goes hand in hand. But I would say I started off initially just seeing how communications would go, obviously with my direct boss, Anita. When I would come to her with feedback, how was that received? It was always received so positively, and it empowered me to feel more comfortable speaking up in more team meetings, speaking up across our Slack channels, because we're fully remote as well. So trying to be strategic about so many different messages and things flying around, right? And how can you make your voice kind of move through that current as well? But I would say a lot of it has been empowerment. There's something that one of our leadership team members said to me a couple of weeks ago was, you are fully empowered, which I thought was so meaningful, because I had come to her with a question being how do you think about this in terms of such and such process? And she was like, you're fully empowered. If you want to take that and run with it, please feel free. And so I think it's just fostering a culture first and forefront that allows people to feel that they are able to speak up. You should have trust in your team, right? I feel like that's not anything new, but you're hiring people that you trust. So you should trust them and allow them to kind of grow outside of the spans and help in terms of culture and fostering that new development. Hopefully that was helpful. But
yeah, and I think it's interesting because you obviously have the confidence to speak up and to bring solutions, and maybe not everybody does. And so I think that's a really nice message that CSMs can spend so much of their life executing on things that they've been told to execute on, but actually, you know a lot about your customers, you know a lot about how to run CS teams and how to run your book of business. And so like when you spot an opportunity, when you spot something that could be done differently, speak up with a solution, because there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience that lies within a CSM and what they're able to do.
100%, because we're the ones in the trenches, for lack of a term, right?
Yeah.
We're always the ones that are communicating specifically with our customers. So I always tell my customers, I am your advocate, because there's a lot of things, right, that from like a product perspective or from like just a renewals perspective, I might not always get to make the decisions of what we're going to be doing, right? Because that's not my purview. I am an account manager or a CSM, whatever you'd like to call me, but more so trying to be the advocate for my customers as well as the advocate for Loxo. So just kind of being in between and repeating back what we're hearing from both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, nice. Great. Yeah. Well, probably last question for you. What do you think makes a great AM or CSM?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many things that you could say, right? When I think about my team, I want to tie back to just the emotional intelligence. Like, I am very biased because my team is the coolest group of people. I'm sure you would say about your team, right? But I feel like the smartest people all came to work at Loxo, and they have the best personalities as well. And so I think emotional intelligence is a big one. It ties back to what we were talking about of trying to understand the ins and outs of your customer's business. So really trying to figure out what would make them feel sticky from an emotional human to human level, and then capitalizing that in terms of just the adoption of the tool. I also just really think that the CSMs that are going to be pivotal within this market are the ones that are continuously thinking outside of the box. We are at the height of technology right now. So how can we leverage the data, the metrics, the just cutting down on admin things, right? Like even like writing emails, like how can we leverage AI and automation to help us while also absolutely maintaining that human touch? I think just making sure that we're working smarter, not harder, and doing our best to be a good human along the way. Yeah.
I think your last piece is so important. Like AI is there not to like replace what a CSM is doing. AI is there to take we would call it like the busy work off your plate. Like, why do the admin? Why do all that groundwork when AI can do that for you? And then you can spend the time with customers that is impactful to leverage all of that information, but to drive it forward. So yeah, thank you. Regan, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. And massive congratulations again for winning the award. Very well deserved. And thank you for spending some time with me.
Yeah, thanks, Tash. Thanks so much. It was so nice to chat with you today.